Okay, so this little moment comes when it's finally time to get back on, say a little more, share a little more, tell a little more. And as of all things, I say that this is a time when I decide I'm going to get on, try to carve out these cats here. Just kind of decided to take some time to let the video upload to my Amazon photos, from my tablet, which I had to delete a lot of stuff out of the drive to give it room to upload. So that took care of that. I will say, furthermore, that of all things we're taking care of now, that it took it a while to download to my laptop, and right now it's uploading to my YouTube as I'm recording this. But I'd say there's just a little more I have to share about how I have been carving these cats. I kind of carved them out of walnut from a little flat plane material. Might have even shown you all a video of how I did them before. I finished two a while back and even made a picture of them that I posted online. I finished two more recently and have them over here soaking in some linseed oil. And as I've mentioned before, it's just one of those things where when it comes to these little flat plane patterns that I do, I kind of carve it according to a flat plane style, similar to how I did some creatures for some nativity sets. That book and those pattern and those instructions kind of gave me some wonderful ideas. So there's a little bit more I have to say as far as how I come about on this. This little work shall take us better ways, take us to better links. I do need to say that, as you know, I've carved along on things and taken them to another level and made them all grouchy. I tell you what, I just cut myself through this thumb protector, and I'd say, well, I tell you what I'll do is kind of use a little paper towel for now to kind of cover the wound and try and put back on the thumb protector over that, maybe. I don't know how this is going to work, how this is going to go, but we're going to take care of things the best we can, even as they freaking need to be. So, but I say that walnut can be kind of a hard wood. They always suggested you use a glove and a thumb protector, especially when carving those much harder woods. And perhaps if I could find it, I'd get out a little bit of extra elastic bandage too, but I'd say that we're going to try to carve along on this. You kind of carve along the back up to the ears first. Take the work, take it go, let it go all the way around, and take a little shine in your light and shine in your tunnel and make it sound brighter and brighter as the day goes on, and make it seem a little nicer and nicer as you work about it. I say that this little project can take us out, and I'd say a little work here and there, it makes it come a long way. Kind of gotta do a little thing where you do a cut like this towards the back, towards the tail, kind of make it a little thinner to go, kind of make a little work come in, and blah. That's how you do it. A little time and a little work, little carving as it goes. I will say, for one thing, that these harder woods, they require more strength, and when you're carving along on them, you're a little more likely to cut yourself. Got to be careful when you do it with walnut, though, because walnut's got a little toxin in it, a little juglone toxin that could probably just, I'd say it won't kill you, but maybe give you a little stomach ache. Little interesting thing I did when I first started carving was I kind of like took a lot of old, when I carved something out of walnut, I took the chips and just to kind of see what I would do, being young, being dumb, wanting to test things out. Mixed the walnut wooden chips left over from carving and with my coffee and with my coffee grinds, put them in the pot together and brewed it just like that. Sometimes it was just kind of because, you know, maybe life was a little harder then, here and there. Maybe just didn't like the way life was. Who knows what my intention was in doing that, but wanted to see what it would do. Maybe add a little walnut flavor to my coffee, maybe. Say, looking back, that it wasn't so wise, but I will say that since we got to avoid getting the blood out on the wood, I have come along and decided to, well, there we go, try to kind of wrap a little extra of this elastic bandage around to try to make it go a little further in. That kind of gets to be something where, you know, it's harder to do a video now of carving because, you know, that's what you do is when you're doing a video, you're more likely to nick yourself trying to do it, but kind of got to undo this here because this is the end of the bandage here, and there was something I wanted to talk about other than this as I was going about this, but looks like I'm going to have a little piece of bandage sticking out here, but that's okay. We still need to do the video, still need to do the carving. So I'd like to say that there are some people in particular who things get real funny about, and somebody I know for sure who I was going to speak about in this video, who is somebody I know probably got a little kick out of that if I showed her the video, and she'd probably watching it by link maybe, if so, by now. But I just wanted to share with you a little blessing that I got today, because with all the stresses I've had, there's a lady I've been contacting, used to go to church with her, used to make a lot of care packages for her. She's married and has 2 daughters, so as you know, it was just one of those things where life was always so good, and finally got a little chance to talk with her a little today over how the weather has been, how grateful we were that we didn't lose power over the ice storm like our governor's been kind of warning us that some of us would. We know that sometimes power outages can get a little rough here and there. They can take a little toll on us, but I really wanted to share some positive things about who I was going to talk about in this video. I will say that I might not mention her name here because I'd like to say that I've written an article about her before. Probably said the article was one of the nicest things anybody's done for her. I mean, she's wonderful with kids. She works with kids. She's kind of funny and sweet to everybody. And since I was talking to her today in a little messenger chat, decided I wanted to get on here and say a little bit about her because she's a blessing. She talks about the blessing I can be, and more than that, I'd really like to share who she is to everybody. As you mentioned, there's places where the saw marks were on the back. Kind of had to shave those away, but as I go about this work, it's going to be a little thing that kind of works itself away, makes it all shiny and new, like all new knives and light and all the things we see, bright, shiny, living days. Oh, the joys of knowing these things. And I'd like to share a little thing about this lady I have to tell you about. First of all, I'd like to say I don't think I sharpened this knife enough, but I will say first of all that you should never give her any public praise for being who she is. She's everything God commands us to be to everybody. Good to everybody in a lot of ways. And with many more things I could share and say, there's been a lot of good about her. I'd like to say that one reason I say you should never give her any public praise or tag her in a post, I say, because I've done it before. And, you know, she appreciated all the grace I put into that, but she finally said to me, I'm not nice to you for public praise. Won't take any credit for treating you the way I treat everybody else. And the way God commands us to treat everybody. So there's probably not too much I'm going to say, but wanted to come on here and say it because we just kind of had a good chat today. We used to go to the same church. She's the sister of the pastor of that church and knew her parents very well. Her parents were really good people, gave her a good upbringing, a good raising, raised her right, knew how to teach her how to work and how to be good to other people and how to treat other people. So much I've said before that I won't say now, but I will say I shared the article with a lot of people. A lot of people were blessed to read it. Probably won't show it on here anytime soon, but there's been pages I've had where I've posted it before, and it tells you just a little bit more about her job. She works with a lot of special needs kids for a certain company, you know, and that's how it goes. I'd like to say that, well, first of all, I'm afraid I have bled through on the wood, but I think that's going to have to do for this video because I have nowhere to go to stop the video for a while just to try to take care of this little mess. But just little more things I'll say as I go, and little more things I'll do as I go. Of course, I'm going to wash all this blood off later, sand it off. But of all things I needed to say, I tell you all that she's a hugger. She hugs everybody. I mean, I'm sure that to a lot of people, it's probably just a common thing that she does it. But it's always been something special to me. I've said a lot of nice things about it in a lot of good ways. Given her a lot of care packages sent through the mail. She's hugged me for every one of them. And probably for many more things as well. For nice emails, for saying nice things. She's as pretty as she can be, even though she's older than me by about 10 years. And, you know, there's so much more I'd like to say. And while I'm at it, I will tell you all I have flat plane carved around all these little edges here on this thing. Almost make it look like an old cat from Egypt. But of all things, I'll say that I'm going to a different church than I used to. She's going to a different church than she used to. We don't really see each other as much as we used to, but we still have our ways of keeping in touch on social media, making each other laugh, making each other's days. And I'd say, of all the things I told you in my last knife sharpening video about that I have put up in a treasury in my shop, I'd like to mention to you a little bit more about it. It's like these figurines that I used to make on the saw for years and give as gifts and care packages to people for years. I gave her plenty of those over the years and many more things. Every Christmas she's given me a lot of baked goods. She bought me a shirt once. She bought me a little Santa stocking from the Dollar Tree. A lot of little sweet things. I mean, she cooks great. I mean, she really loves to bake. And I tell you, I've received so many of these little treats and desserts she makes. They're so good, and she puts so much work into them when she makes them. And I tell you, there's so much more I'd like to say, and probably might not say much while I'm carving, but what I want to say is that our conversation on Facebook went great. The fact that I really wanted to talk about her was the main reason I decided to make a little video here and carve on it, which is why it's a shame I've got this bloody thumb that's coming out on the wood, but I'd say that we're taking care of that the best we can. I was going to try to carve 2 cats for this video, but it turns out that since I had this little cut, I can only carve 1 for the video. But I'd like to show you all how far I've come along. I've carved out the little detail on its legs. And since there's a little bit of an uneven cut of the saw on this side of the cat, I've got to be able to trim to shave along on that. Try to make it come out where it's just a little thinner, a little flatter. Try to make the work come as good as it needs to be. Try to brighten lives for those around us and those around you and me. I can tell you about her that, especially at Christmas time, I'd give her humongous packages. Sometimes really huge. I know there's been times when at our Christmas Eve services, after she's received the packages, she told me how overwhelmed she was by them. One Christmas Eve service I could tell you about her that, I mean, there's probably no telling how many times she hugged me that day, but that's probably what I think is the sweetest thing I ever get from her. Like I said, most people just consider it a common thing for huggers to be huggers, which she is. But with her, I don't know why I always thought hers were so special, or why of all people she ever gave them to, why I always thought it was so special, but could be just because she was always a funny and sweet lady. Probably why they give you so much comfort. I've always appreciated them from anybody, ladies especially, but I'd say for her, she's always been entertaining. She's always done a lot of funny little dances before and after church sometimes. There's been times when she's hugged some people and kind of jumped up and down while doing it. I've seen her do little funny things like, some of it I wouldn't say too much about, maybe just like me, just to kind of give a little kid a hard time like I might do. And sometimes I'd say that once in a while, I'd probably be able to see how she would just give little kisses on the cheeks to these little boys, sometimes even to the older men. Probably one of the sweetest things she ever seen her do to anybody, but I always thought the hugs were the sweetest thing I ever got from her. She's always said a lot of nice things to me. Around the time I first started attending there were times when, even during a service, a midweek gathering or something, if they were about to leave for vacation on a night before Thanksgiving, she'd come by my pew and tell me to have a good Thanksgiving or whatever. And I mean, the holidays were always great. Her girls were always wonderful. She raised three daughters to be good ladies and haven't always kept up with where they have always been in school, but I know that two of them are in college right now. One of them probably in middle school or high school. It's kind of hard to remember all the details, but I'd say that the work was wonderful. She's always done. She always worked for the children in the church, made the children feel blessed. Even before she left that church, there were times when, after I kind of moved my membership over to another church, I'd come back by that church to visit, and she and her husband would invite me to sit with them. Always thought that was so wonderful, you know. She was always a pleasure to sit beside. Just always sweet right there. She'd get a little laughter and get a little funny and sweet. Sometimes she'd even pat you on the knee if she was right there. And sometimes she'd even laugh at all my jokes on social media and come and always, and when she saw me in church after she laughed at my jokes, she'd just laugh her head off and say, "I love you, Jonathan, I love you." So, and it was just all she had to say about all the little funny things I could do and funny things I could say. There were just a lot of things I said and a lot of things I shared that she probably had a little more sense of humor for than some people I knew. Sometimes I'd kind of get a little too off topic here and there. She'd probably kind of laugh a little bit because I'd probably do that. And more than that, she always loved all the stories I had to share through social media as well, and still does. As you see, I kind of came along, had to cut down these lines and thin this tail out here. That's kind of what I've had to do here. I tell you, this is so much work, it's hard to come about it. It's just so much work, it's hard to do. It just kind of makes it tremble sometimes. And I thought earlier it was something wrong with the knife, but this time I think there's a little bit of something wrong with the piece of wood now. Because apparently this is a brittle piece of wood. Apparently I probably picked the wrong part of the wood to try to carve on, because it's coming apart so easily. But I say more and more that there's been so much to say. With it being as late at night as it is, it's just hard to stress it all, but I'll tell you a little more about her as I go. Finally got the tail thinned out and time to kind of carve a little further along the edges of it, kind of make it a little nice and neat, kind of make it a little good as it goes, try to show a little grace here and there. And I tell you all, it's just a tough piece of wood, but coming about it just fine. Just sometimes, things can be a little hard to express, but I just do want to say that she even comes from a wonderful family, you know. I've known her parents for years. They've always been such wonderful people. I've always given her all kinds of things made out of wood, maybe a few things out of fabric. Some things were just symbolic of her family and her girls. And I'd say that it was always just things that always tickled. Sometimes she'd come home from vacation and tell me what a treat she got when she came home. I always kind of thought, for one thing, that as far as the packages were concerned, they were always good. I always appreciated her hugs with or without a package, but I say that as things go on here, kind of got a lot to say. I'm kind of trying to trim these corners of this tail, kind of trying to make it turn out the way it should. This little corner here, it's just gonna make its light shine on the evening of the sun. I'd say that it's just being hard to keep my thumb protector on here, but I say that there's many more things I'd say, but I do want to tell you about the lady we've been talking about. You know, if anybody out there is misunderstood, it's going to break her heart. If any good people are out there trying to mean well by what they do and somebody's ugly to them, it's going to break her heart. I kind of used to think so much about how she was like that with me, but I'd say sometimes she would just tell me, "You're just too kind. I just don't feel so deserving." And one time I finally came down to it. I decided to stop tagging her in the posts and all, but the article was good. I'd say since we come along one side of this, we're going to try to shave away the saw marks on this side of the kitty cat. And of all things, I say that some things just meant a lot. There was one post I made about her, and it's like my friends were all commenting on it, saying such wonderful stuff. But I decided to kind of make the post private, because sometimes, just sometimes, you know, somebody can appreciate the little ways you are to them and the good you are to them and all the things you mean about, well, by what you say. But I will say there came a time with her when some people reading her page kind of started to question my character a little bit, and I got a little concerned about my own reputation with strangers, but she explained it all kindly to them, and they pretty much, I'd say, understood it after that. So there were a few things I started to understand as well, and kind of decided to lighten up about it. And I'd say it just all got so good that it just made a better world for us all. I mean, she could be a jokester, she could be a comedian, she could be a little funny here and there, she could make you laugh, she could tickle you, but most of all, was always saying to my Facebook posts how much I tickled her. I will say she's still working with kids. She still does a lot of stuff online with cooking. She still does a lot of stuff with exercise training and so much more. There's even a young man who's about the age of her daughter that just recently went to the military, and before he did, he posted about how he was like her second mother in so many ways. That was so wonderful to hear. There was so much article to share, and I say at this point, you learn in life not to tag people so much in posts. Kind of get a little off topic here and there, but what I'm saying is true. You know, Sometimes I might say a little too much. I might be a little too open about people, but it's kind of good that we all kind of set our limits, try not to be too overly generous or overly gracious, because that's been an issue with me in my life, and people have been uneasy with it before, but I'd say sometimes some people might just be a little more willing to speak up for themselves sometimes, and she sure did. It's hard to kind of get a hold of little random things, talk straight while we're carving, but I'd say we got most of the carving to this done, about as much as we needed to do. I say that there's a place here along the tail where I'm going to apply a little more work, try to make it go a longer way, but I'll say that there was always times, never time she saw me, she didn't hug me. Always during the church greeting or anything else. Always the type who'd rather hug you than shake your hand. I mean, sometimes I kind of might have over exaggerated a little bit here and there sometimes. Probably said a little too much, but it was all good with her in the end. It was all just a little understanding. Sometimes there might have been little stories to my life as to why common things to other people might have been a bigger deal to me, but we kind of learn as we grow older that some things just all work for the good. I told her in the Facebook message last night about how it was that, I just always have all these memories I cherish of trading with her packages for hugs. And that being all the things I have, all the letters and cards I received, and just all the things where she tells me that, where she has all these packages and all my letters and all the notes I ever wrote by hand or anything else, treasures it all. And it's all just treasured to her. Apparently, I don't see how she makes room for it all, because, it's a big space, but sometimes, just sometimes, I will say that I learned to kind of handle things off a little better. Try to say things a little less. Now, I will say, as far as I've come along on the cat, I think I've probably done about as much carving as I need to do. The rest will have to be sanded, but I do want to share with you one last little step that I need to take. That is on the ears. I did have to kind of switch my thumb guard over. These thumb guards, I mean, when it comes to these sharper knives, they can be real thin. I say that, of all things, you know, I've just always appreciated who she's been to everybody as I learn over time about this. And from her, I learned a valuable lesson that, don't just give people credit for who they are to you. Give them credit for who they are to everybody you know. And give them credit for who they are to everybody you know who they are to. And so there's just some people with whom I've kind of learned to share a little more information about that. And I say, of all things, sometimes I might have shared a little too much, been a little too opinionated here and there, probably said a little things, and some things she didn't mind that I included in the article, and things she said shaped who she were, but I don't really talk about those things as much. I've just gotten a little bit older and things have changed, but I might still kind of share little copies of the article now and then, just to kind of tell people a few little good things, try to bless people, try to make people's days. Turns out this is becoming the longest video I ever made. Hopefully, if I get around to doing another one, things will be a little less hectic, a little less tied up, and probably I won't be bleeding, probably be able to share a little more. But that's just kind of how far I wanted to come along today. Sometimes I just talk randomly while I go about things, but it's just the things that mean a lot to you, and probably will to many more people you know, and many more people that you share it with. I'd like to say more, but it's getting pretty late at night, and as I'm recording this, I'm kind of needing to treat this little wound, so I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Maybe see a thing or two I might have to take care of in its own way, and definitely sand all that blood off, because it's just kind of gotten to be a little too much of it there. I will say that this little mess of mine, it's kind of coming about and making little life shines and making little bright days, and I'd say that these little messes we can just kind of get behind us here. I'm going to have to throw that out. And luckily I've got plenty of elastic bandage left to make many more thumb guards from. But what I want to say is that that's about all I need to say today. And hopefully on another day I can have a little more to say. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.